Good morning, guys. It's Tuesday, and what we're going to do today, we're going to start off with a little how-to on how to use the panel beater. I got a new battery, or a newer battery, in that guy the other day, and heard a little discussion about that. Talked about it the other day, and we're going to work on a dent that I have right here. And what I've done is I've taken the DA with some 80 grit on it and tried to find the outline of where my dent is, and you can see that there's scratches all up in here, but it didn't touch any of this. So we know the dent is mostly in this area. Now this doesn't come completely flat all the way to the edge. I've taken a straight edge and checked the other side of the bed. And there's actually, when you hold a straight edge on it, there's actually about an 1/8 to a 16th gap along here, but the rest of this stays flat. So the first thing we need to do is we need to remove the paint and the e-coat all the way down to bright shiny metal in this area. So I'm going to take my small die grinder. This is 36 grit. You can use the DA if you want. You can use a bigger grinder if you want, but this metal is not very thick, so you have to be kind of quick about it in removing the paint. You can also use the 3M rust wheel. That'll strip the paint off of it. But I'm going to use this because it's fast and for demonstration purposes. Take all of it off with this. I'm going to finish up with the DA because I do not want to run that grinder along this edge. That's a bent edge, and that is going to be thinner steel. But I've got 80% of it removed, so I'll use the DA to remove the rest of it and start feathering that paint back a little bit. I'm using my straight edge along there, and I'm going to check for where that dent needs to be pulled, and I'm going to mark it with a marker. So I'm going to take my Sharpie and just kind of get a rough idea for where this dent starts to go in. I like to use the Sharpie to sort of get an idea. I mean, a trained eye can usually see where that dent is, but I like to do this just to have that little added security that I know I'm not getting into an area that I don't need to be into. So, that's the area I'm going to work on. I'm going to need a body hammer, because on the edge of this dent out here, when a dent goes in this area, the endpoint impact is usually in your lowest spot. That's the first damage in, and that'll be the last damage we want to pull out. We don't want to go straight for that crease and start pulling on it. We want to start out toward the edge and working our way toward that lowest point. And when that dent is created, it'll make a high spot on the outside. Now this dent isn't a great example of that because of the style of dent that it is, and it's right on a seam over here. So it's a little different, but it's basically the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start making some pulls just out from that edge so that I can get in here and tap with the body hammer. I've already got the ground hooked up on the vehicle. And I did some tests on some other metal here just to make sure I don't have the heat set too high on this. But we're going to give this a whirl. Pull out on this, and I'm going to tap it. Basically just wiggle and twist this thing and it pops right back off. So I'm going to grab my straight edge and kind of see how I'm doing here. Make sure I'm not getting too carried away. If I'm within a 16th to a 32nd on a dent like this, I'll be pretty happy. The other tool you can use is it has this pulling lever here. And you basically lay the pulling lever down. Weld, pull on it, and break it loose. Trick is giving yourself enough room to tap on it. I'm by no means an expert at this machine, but I'm getting the hang of it. you don't have a lot of room to place your pulling lever. Now, I made this pulling lever because when I got the machine, it didn't come with one. So far, everything's right on the money. I'm making those pulls about 1 inch apart. Because of the size of this dent, it's a pretty large dent, so it's not a real hard one to pull. It's actually fairly simple to pull. I don't have the heat turned way up on this because I don't need it to grab real hard. You don't need to pull really hard. All you'll do is pull a dimple up in the metal if you pull too hard. They also make a slide hammer for this, which I want to buy. For bigger dents, plus it's a little easier. Get my chair ready. Check it again. I think I pulled a little too hard on that one. Checking as I go to see where I'm at. I don't have a lot more to pull out of this dent. There's only so much you can get. Hammer, I'm not beating straight on it, I'm dragging it along. And you kind of want to use that hammer as squarely as possible. As I get closer to that seam, I'm not going to be able to pull it up quite as far because that's pretty hard stuff. I'm going to have to use the lever. I'm not going to tap down on it as much because I pulled most of that wave out. have it on the lowest setting, but I don't have it on the highest setting either. This metal is not that thick. If you have it too hot, all you do is pull a dimple up. You gotta be careful. If you have a lot of heat and that thing's really attached, you'll actually pull a hole in the metal. And that's never good. That is not the object. And I think that's where I'm going to stop pulling. I'm going to clean all those tack marks off with the DA real quick. And I'll show you guys what that looks like with the straight edge up against it, so you have an idea. Doesn't feel too bad. I'm gonna make a couple more pulls on this. I know this video is probably getting long, but I want to make sure I get as much of this up as I can so you can see, you know, the process. Do a couple more light pulls on this, and we'll see where we're at. I have used this machine before. You notice I'm not checking it a bunch at this point. I know about how much I can pull on it. Without going too far or distorting it. It doesn't take a lot of effort because you're pulling in little bits. I was probably close enough before to mud it in, but alright, I'll go ahead and check that one last time. I think I am within a reasonable amount to get that. The reason I'm hitting that with the DA is so that I don't have any little noogies sticking up. There you go. I'll show you, and then we'll do a part 2 on getting that prepped up and ready for some a wipe, a lightweight filler. You're already at 24 minutes. But there's where we're at. You can see there's really not much gap in there. Not much at all. So alright guys, that's part 1 on pulling a dent with the arc panel beater, and we'll come back for part 2.